Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast. This is where we ask guests to tell us your story. Your story can be encouraging, inspiring, and very transforming. We want guests to share their experiences and events in their lives that can benefit others. We all have a story, so I ask you to contact me on the website dealbyme.com if you have a story that you would like to share. I want you to comment, want you to subscribe if you are viewing this on YouTube, and let us know what you think about our podcast. Today we have with us David Pasqualone, who is an exciting guest. David's life has been full of intense challenges in every area: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, familiar, relational, social, and financial. But I come to tell you that through it all, he has learned that despite his circumstances and personal perspective, God has been there for him. God has loved him, and he has a bigger plan than what he had imagined. I'm so grateful to be able to interview this gentleman today with such a great story, David Pasqualone. And if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, he will definitely let us know.
Nope, that's
David,
perfect. That's perfect, my friend.
David, it's good to have you with us this today, and I'm thankful that you have agreed to do an interview with the Deal by Me podcast. So, would you
Uh,
first of all tell us where you being interviewed from and a little bit about your background in as brief as you can, and then we'll get into a good conversation as it relates to you.
no problem. It's an honor to be here and to talk to you and your audience. My name's David Pasqualone. Right now, I'm living in Pensacola, Florida. Love it here. Been here since 2007. No plans on leaving unless God tells me so. And I got two awesome teenagers. I have my own company, sales and marketing consultant. We have a podcast, the Remarkable People podcast, and it's just taking people's life stories and not just talking about what they overcame or achieved, but we break in the practical steps of how they did it so our listeners can too. So a lot like your show, James. And then um just try and do everything I can to bring glory to God and help people grow and feel love.
Oh, wow, beautiful. And I had a chance to kind of look at your bio and was very impressed with how you have uh, managed your life as a result of all that you have encountered. And so that struck me quite. Uh, it really just kind of touched me as I was looking at it. Um,
Yeah.
so let me just ask you a couple of questions as we move along. I note that you have had some terrible situations, some extreme challenges, and obviously some unbearable odds that you have lived through. And but yet life turned out has turned out great for you. Tell us a little bit about how you did that.
Yeah, so and I'm going to be real transparent. I mean, not everybody listening is going to have the same biblical worldview I have. Not everybody is going to believe in God. Not everybody is going to have a good relationship with God right now. But that doesn't change facts. You know, if you are outside and you throw something in the air, it's going to come back down. That's a fact. If you jump in the water, you're going to get wet. That's a fact. So I believe there's a God. I've seen him throughout my life, and he loves you and me. He loves the whole world. So if you're not a believer, listen, all truth comes from God. Doesn't matter if you're Donald Trump, Jack Welch, doesn't matter who you are.
Mhm.
If something works in business, in life, it comes from the Bible. So listen, if you are a believer, but you're discouraged, you feel like God abandoned you, listen, you got all the details, the data, but you're interpreting the data wrong. Okay. And then if it comes to people who are, man, I really did this and I deserve what I got.
Mhm.
Well, listen, because I'm not special, but God is, and we're special to him. And then the same thing, if people out there haven't done anything, they're like Joseph. They literally didn't do anything wrong, and yet they're
Mhm,
beaten, abused, and betrayed, and repeatedly for years, not just a couple months.
mhm,
It's the same thing. So for my life, what James was talking about is I've had the privilege and the blessing of having a rough life. Like I've had crazy stuff. I'm turning 46 this week, but sometimes I look back and I'm like, "Wow, I've had a lot of stuff happen that's like 5 lifetimes."
mm,
So, as a kid, I grew up with single mom, which is common these days, very poor by American standards. My grandma, I watched her for the first 4 years of my life just die miserably of cancer. I loved her and she loved me. But it was just watching someone deteriorate before your eyes at 4. And then we had people in our family who killed another member of our family, supposedly, and they would call me up from prison and say, "We're breaking out to kill you." And I mean, then I was very lonely. Like there was no boys in my neighborhood. And my mom, she loved me and she did her best, but she had her own issues. So I was just
mm,
basically alone,
mm,
and raising myself in a lot of ways. So the childhood had a bunch of just, you know, different challenges that were on the severe side. I developed a bunch of nervous behaviors like twitches and compulsive disorder. And back then it was like, dude, just stop. And I did. But what would happen is I'd stop one compulsive disorder, like licking my lips, and then it would turn to a head twitch.
mm,
And then the head twitch would stop, and I get these crazy bad stomach aches. So all the stress and emotional just pain in my life, I wasn't trained or equipped like most children aren't, right? And the home was broken. So then you're trying to live and get better, but you just don't know how. So you start internalizing it. And that's why a lot of people are sick today. They don't need pharmaceuticals. They need to deal with their past and they need to deal with their present, so they can have a good future. But so then I had that going on. And then when I was in my teens, I started getting sick all the time. Well, because of my mom's history, she had her own stuff going on. I was, emotionally just sad and lonely and had issues like there. Nobody knew. And when I say I had issues, it was internal. Like nobody saw it other than the twitches that start in the fourth or fifth grade. Nobody saw it. And then shortly after that, I started getting sick all the time. And they ran me through a bunch of tests, said nothing was wrong, nothing was wrong. And they told me I was a hypochondriac again because they thought my mom was using me to get attention. So I literally stopped going to the doctor. I was like sick all the time, but I never went, falling asleep. And this went on for years. And then when I got to be 18, you turn 18 in most states, you're a legal adult.
mhm,
I went to the doctor. I said, take out my tonsils and adenoids. And they're like, why? I'm like, I'm sick all the time. I have sore throats like every week or two. Take them out. And I had this lump that grew in the roof of my mouth. And in January of 95, I went on a trip, like on an airplane, and my ear blocked and I couldn't hear. So then all this is happening, and I'm like, just take them out. You get paid to take them out, take them out. And then they're like, okay. And then the week before the pre-op, they're like, oh, where'd that lump come from? It must be an abscess. I'm like, it's been there for months. I told you. And they're like, that hasn't been there. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. So they took this biopsy, and long story short, it ended up being a very rare tumor the size of an orange with a tail down my throat. And basically my whole teenage years, it was just growing and growing and growing, and it was starving my brain from like blood flow and oxygen. And that's why I was always sick. So the tumor was in my head, but literally it was in my head, not a psychosomatic thing. So
mm,
then I got brought to Dr. William Montgomery, literally the best ENT in the world. He was the head of Harvard Medical School. So you got a poor kid on welfare who has nothing. And then because of it, I don't believe that you should live off of the government, but government programs were put in place to help people for short periods of time. And at that point, I was 18, had no insurance. They just found out this huge tumor I had, tell me I'm going to die. So long story short, that got me through. And that was great. So I had a surgery. They took it out. It grew back. Took it out. It grew back. Then I had radiation. So this whole thing took a year. And each time they said I was going to die, there's no way, if you don't die, you're going to be retarded. If you're not mentally handicapped, you're going to be physically handicapped. And every time they went in, God provided and just got me through and did more than that. Like if you saw me, you wouldn't even know I've had major surgeries. And I not only had one major surgery, I had two. And it was, surgery to embolize the tumor on Monday. And, that was like, I think it was like a 12-hour surgery the first time. And then you have to lay 24 hours totally still, which is probably it was so painful. And then on Wednesday, they go in and cut out the tumor and rip open your head. And that took, I think it was 16 hours. And I was supposed to be in the hospital for like a month. And just like that, I lost less blood than a nosebleed from this major surgery. And I was discharged by Saturday with almost no pain. So all through my childhood, I had these extreme things happen, but God always got me out. But I never had an explanation. And then that carried through my adulthood. Stuff happened with work professionally, crazy stuff, like episodes of like American Greed were made for people I worked for, right? Got me through that. Then we had like physical illness again. I had bad dental work in 2005. And for 2 years, I was getting sicker and sicker. And then in 2007, I collapsed. And from 2007 to 2009, I was in level 8 or 9 pain every day. And I dropped to 145 pounds. So, and then like during that, we all have normal life stuff. And then we're juggling crazy stuff where in 2014, my wife, she made some really bad decisions, and you know we're not married anymore. I spent 6 years fighting for the marriage, and it didn't work out. There's one reason for divorce. Even then, God hates divorce. I didn't want to get divorced. I wanted to keep the family together for nothing else, the sake of the kids. But after 6 years, I just got exhausted and depressed. And I was still like, okay, God, I've seen my whole life. Everything happens for a reason. And this is so painful. Why is this happening? So, like I said, physical stuff during those sicknesses, I was self-insured, right? So paying money out. I didn't go gamble. I didn't become a drug addict. I didn't do any of that stuff. But I lost all the money. So we've had financial highs and lows and physical highs and lows and emotional highs and lows. And during all of this, I come out on top. And it's not because of anything I did other than trust God. And that's what I encourage people to do. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking the question, God, why is this happening?
Okay.
Don't question God and say, God, why are you doing this? Because you're a dummy if you do that.
Let me ask you this, David. It Your conversation, I can tell that you have been basically critically ill on a number of times, and obviously you survived. You're here with me today. And I know that maybe some folk who have said to you, going through all that you went through and trying to pull yourself together and get ahead, have probably said to you, man, you need to just give up. You don't
Oh,
need
yeah.
to try to do all this stuff. So tell me, how did you keep going and working, doing all this chaos in your life?
This is how. I know and know and know that God loves me, and I know He's not a vindictive God. He's not a lying God. He's not anything negative. So if you're going through these hardships, you listening, God has a plan for you. He loves you. He wants to see you thrive. We just don't know the time frame. It may not even be in this lifetime, but it'll be an eternity. And if I said, work hard for me for 1 hour and then the rest of your life, I'm going to make you a billionaire, would you do it? Yeah. Well, this life is short, 70, 80 years on average, right? So when this was going on, James, I just thought there's a reason. God's allowing this for a reason. He's not causing it, He's allowing it. That's number one. Number two, there's always a way. I believe like all the things they told me about my tumor when I was a kid or being sick or wow, you had all this surgery, like my face. If you're watching this, I'm 45 years old, Italian guy. They gave me intense radiation at double dose for 30 days. That alone almost killed me. They told me I'd never have facial hair again. Man, I got to shave every day or I grow a woolly beard. So, I mean, everything the doctors have told me, and again, you got to balance this all the way left or all the way right. You know, God, it says he loves balance, right? A false balance is abomination to the Lord. Well, if you're living life too left or too right, they're both crazy. You gotta have balance. And so I listen to what doctors say. I'll listen to what naturopaths say. I'll listen to what people say, but then I filter it all through, okay, prayer and reading my Bible and common sense and reality and real science. And I never took what the doctors said. If I took what the doctors said, I'd be a crippled in bed for the rest of my life. And now I literally am I'm fat because I haven't worked out in a while, but that's just my laziness, right? But I'm healthy, I'm strong, life's going great. I live on the beach in Pensacola. I mean, I've been restored in almost every way. In the ways I'm still working on, I know God's going to restore that too. I just got to do my part. But the key is always be searching. Like, and this sounds stupid, but I remember as a kid, like samurai and old warriors, they could get their arm cut off in battle and they could mentally shut down the bleeding and continue to fight.
Okay, David,
And
let me ask you this because I
yeah,
want to get some important things in because of
yeah,
what my podcast is all about. Uh, I I pastored that church for 2 months short of 32 years, and same church. Retired just in December, and I started a podcast so that I can continue my ministry by encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming lives. And obviously, you have said quite a bit along this line today already that would be in conformity with what I try to do. So I want to just ask you if someone uh, listening to this podcast is feeling, down, have gone through some of the same, uh, uh, I guess, sickness and other trauma in their lives. What would you say to them based upon your experiences and events in your life that will benefit them, would give them some hope, could encourage and inspire them? Uh, just briefly, what could you say to them?
don't quit. Don't quit.
Okay.
If you're here, there's a reason. God has a plan for you. And some people are running like a marathon fast. Some people are walking. Some people are literally pushing a wheelchair. And sometimes we're climbing a mountain. And this is spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. I'm using the same type of metaphor. But if you're on a mountain and you're holding onto a rock and you're about to fall off, your job is just to do your best and keep moving forward. And if all you can do is pull yourself up an inch at a time, pull yourself up an inch at a time. Eventually, you'll get the nutrients, the water, the food, the strength, the encouragement, someone to pick you up. But our job is just to keep going and not quit. Now, that doesn't mean we don't take rest. That doesn't mean we don't have balance. But no matter how hard things get, just remember if you're here, there's a purpose and keep moving forward.
Okay, that's great advice, and listeners, I trust that you are really keeping this to heart. Uh, don't go in a place, listeners. As David's going to come back and going to still ask a few more questions, and he has a little bit more to share with us. But in the meantime, David, can you share with us how listeners can contact you, or if you have any books, uh, or is there a website, or what do you do that listeners can kind of find you and get help, if that's a good word to use?
Yeah, no problem. So if someone wants to reach me, they can go to my website at davidpasqualone.com and you can check out the spelling in the show notes, but it's David Pasqualone and just go to the connect contact us page. For the book, we actually have a book came out from the podcast the first of the year. So the podcast is Remarkable People Podcast and the book is Remarkable People Volume 1, how they did it and you can too. So you can check out the book, you can check out the podcast, you can check out our website, and everything's just that, again, help you grow and glorify God.
Oh, great, great. And our listeners, I hope that this will be of help to you. David, tell us what do you do for a living professionally? Is that just podcasting, or is there anything else that you do?
No, I started the podcast just as, again, just to help people, kind of a ministry, and it's taken off. We're a top 2 podcast in the world, over 100 countries regularly. For a career, I'm a sales and marketing consultant. So
Okay.
I just listen to people. This is their goals. This is where they're realistically at. I reverse engineer the plan for them to get there. And then when we're done, I hand them a handbook that says, hey, this is what you need to do to achieve your goals. You can run it yourself. You can do it with us and we'll coach you, or we'll do it for you and you just do what you love. So that's kind of what I do for a career.
I'm going to ask you this probably crazy question, and but in my mind, it's not crazy because I think I feel the same way that you do. Well, as a matter of fact, I know I feel the same way as I've heard you talk. So, but I do want to ask it for listeners' sake. Do you really believe there is a God? And where are you today, physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially? And did your belief get you to where you are?
Yeah, 100%. I believe there's a God. And when I decided to trust Christ as my savior, I looked at everything. I looked at different religions. I looked at facts. I looked at, mythology. I looked at everything, and it all comes back to God. And the biggest thing you can do, the best thing you can do if you don't believe, is read the Bible. Start in the New Testament, especially like John. And you're reading your Bible and you're hearing history. It ties to history that's proven, trackable. There's no verse in the Bible I've ever found that's not true, that doesn't tie into reality. Sometimes, again, that's the data. We need to know how to interpret it. But the message, Old Testament, New Testament, it's all consistent. And again, I've seen God answer prayer. I've seen things happen that wouldn't happen without him. But it's not like, oh God, I need you to make this, this building move five blocks. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Not that he couldn't do it, but probably
Mhm.
not going to happen in my lifetime. But yeah, I believe there's a God completely, and he brings me peace and joy. And even despite crazy bad circumstances, I've had peace and joy in the lowest moments of life. That doesn't mean it's been fun or it wasn't pain, but that's it. And then forgive me, you asked the second part of that question. What was that second part?
Well, the second part was about how you today, physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially, uh, it, how are you feeling about your life today?
Good. Like I said, I went through a divorce because you can't control 2 people. And I haven't been recovering from that. And it put a huge toll on my children and
Mhm.
myself. And my children now are 20 and 19. And I love them so much. But I'm waiting for the day the truth will always come out and God will reveal in time. So I know we're going to have a great, tight, close relationship again, but it definitely put walls between us. So that's an area of pain and sadness for me. And that's just something that I've searched my soul. God knows the truth. I know the truth. So now I just got to
Mhm.
wait for everything to play out. Other than that, business is booming. Physically, like I said, I got lazy, but I'm great health. And again, if you really think of it, one time I made a chart with a friend because they were asking me all the surgeries I've had and all the damage and just different injuries. My whole thing was just covered up, which is crazy, right? But yet, physically strong, healthy,
Mhm.
and like we get to speak and talk and write and work and help people. And yeah, I mean, life really is good. I'm not like retired and I don't own my own island yet, but life's going well.
Okay. Well, with all that you have gone through, uh, I mean, and obviously you have gone through a lot in your life, and to just hear you talk, you really ministered to meet us today because um, I've had those those tumultuous times in my life, but I'm a believer, and I know what God can do, and so you're speaking to me, and I know what you're saying. But I do want to ask: was there ever a time that you felt like giving up? Was there ever a time that you felt like quitting? Uh, you know,
Yeah.
did you
So
ever
for
go
me,
through that?
yeah, I struggle with, so because of my dad abandoned me. We didn't talk, like my dad just left me. He was a millionaire and I grew up like when it rained, the house poured, right? Inside the house.
Mhm.
So my mom's doing her best, but she didn't have money and my dad just forget you. I don't want anything to do with you, right? So I struggle with like sadness
Mhm.
my whole life. And then when I got to my teens, they started saying, you're messed up in the head, and it wasn't. It was physical. And then when I got into life, I was just low key sadness. But then when all this stuff happened with my marriage, man, I got depressed. And the way Satan attacks me, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't, adultery, it wasn't anything like that. It was depression. It was like exactly the opposite of who I am, nature, God made me. Seems like you're worthless, you have no value. Look at what your life is right now. You got nothing to offer. Why even bother? Stay in bed, just freaking screw it all. So Satan was working with trying to just destroy me, because Satan has two objectives, as you know, as a pastor. But if you're listening to this, it's real. Number
Mhm.
one, he wants you to keep you from trusting Christ. And then number two, if you do trust Christ, he wants you to be ruined, to ruin your testimony and do no good to tell other people about Christ. So I struggle. Like, you can have an alcoholic who struggles with wanting to drink, but they don't drink. You can
Mhm.
have somebody who's a food addict or a porn addict or a drug addict. Just because that's their weakness, that doesn't mean they're active in it,
Mhm.
right? They just need to be careful. That's their
Yeah.
Achilles heel. So for me, it is sadness. It's like depression.
Mhm.
And what I do is, and I really want to go back to this, if you don't mind. All the doctors are, most of them are, good and they're trying, but they have this program medicine. And when I was the sickest in my life, both times, when I was 18 with the tumor, and when I was in my 30s and I got that dental, it was poisoning me, shutting down my body, lost not a kidney, lost gallbladder, and then they told me to write out my will again. When that happened, again, I filtered all the information through, I listened to it, but I did the opposite of what the doctor said and I got better.
Mm.
And I'm telling you, like literally the opposite. I have stomach issues. They're like, stop drinking coffee. I'm like, I don't drink coffee. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drink coffee. My
Mhm.
stomach started getting better. So, I mean, that's just one small illustration.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, for me, I will struggle with depression. But then I think, dude, this isn't what God called you to do. This is what Satan's trying to keep you to
Mhm.
do. And
Okay.
then Rob Jackson was a counselor, friend of mine, Christian, works for Focus on the Family. Great human, great counselor, saved a bunch of marriages. God used him to help a bunch of people. And he wasn't my marriage counselor, but I'm friends with him from the podcast. And he helped me so much by one conversation. I hope this helps your listeners. He said, when you hear, because I'd wake up in the morning, James, and be like, you suck, you're no good, blah, 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 all this negative talk. And it would just make me want to do nothing with my day. And he said, Dave, what do those voices say? And I tell him, he's like, no, specifically, write down what they say. So I wrote down like 5 or 10 of the things I heard. And he's like, Dave, every one of those voices says, you suck. You're no good. You're not helping anybody. And he's like, that's Satan putting thoughts in your head.
Mm.
He's like, if it said, I'm no good, I suck. He's like, that's an issue. We address it. He's
Okay.
like, but that's Satan saying you're no good. He's like, you're being attacked. And man, that was a game changer for me. So the struggle is there, but it's so much less. And at the end of the day, set goals, hard, fast goals. At 3 o'clock on the 17th, I am doing this. And
Okay.
that gets your butt out of bed. That gets
That's,
me out of bed.
that's well said. Well
Yep.
said.
Yep.
Well said. I appreciate you so much, David. This has been an exciting and very compelling interview, And there you have it, listeners. David Pasqualone, who has shared many real life examples of trouble situations he has found himself in with some extreme challenges and unbearable odds that he has lived through. And I want to tell you that life turned out great for him. And he is a straightforward, clear, and simple communicator with a history of success. David Pasqualone is someone that you need to check out, and I believe you will be for the better. David, it's good to have had you share with us today, and I wish you continued success
Oh,
as you move forward.
thank you, James, and likewise, my friend. Hopefully, we can keep in touch and continue the conversation.
Thank you so very, very much.